Were there a lot of people out in that one too?
Yeah, I was just oh my gosh, wait for hours later, I start chilling. It's a beautiful time. It's a tough time.
There's King. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Warsaw Council meeting. Before we get started, I would like to remember former State Senator Kent Adams, who passed away this weekend. Most recently, Kent was clerk treasurer of the town of Winona Lake. Kent was a state policeman. Kent did a lot of things. If you see his obituary, it's rather lengthy, and he was quite a servant to not only the community but the state as well. Well liked, and it was kind of a shock to see that he passed away. So, Jeff, I'd ask you to remember him in your opening prayer here.
Thank you. Father, we pause to just thank you for this community. I think of individuals like Senator Adams. Be a servant, give back, be a good neighbor, all those things that he was able to show us. I thank you for that, and I just ask that that will be a good example for us. I think at this time of year, the light enters the world. I just ask that we'll look and walk toward that direction, the promise of redemption. I thank you for everybody in this room. I thank you for this body, thinking of service and giving back. Greatly appreciate each and every one of them. I ask that you'll continue to bless our community, the people that live in it. As we look at tonight's agenda, I ask that we also have sharp minds and humble hearts. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Let the minutes reflect everyone is here tonight in person. Dan Spalding was a few minutes late. Other than that. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. All right. So let's, got a busy agenda tonight. Let's dive into the approval of the minutes from the December 6th meeting. I know those were presented by Lynn. Were there any corrections, or is a motion to approve those as presented?
I so move. Approve.
I second it.
Okay. All right, further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Certainly like to welcome all our visitors tonight. I think all will have a hand in the meeting, so we'll meet them as they're involved, but thank you for coming tonight. Lynn, we'll start with reports on communications. You've got the November fund report posted on board pack. Any, I guess, 11 out of 12 months, looking pretty good. I think the, is the second payment of property taxes distribution?
Those deposited today.
So those won't show in the, they'll show in the December. Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you. All right. Tonight I've asked Dave Matthews from Matthews LLC to come up to the podium and give us a little bit of an update on the North Buffalo Street project. I've got a couple of renderings here that he's asked me to share, so give me just a second. All right.
Cool. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So update, we built the first 3 shelves of the townhomes on Buffalo Street. The southernmost one is a model. The middle one is under contract. She should move in January or February of next year. The third one is still available. On the west side, we are building the Muse, the tiny townhouses. There's 4 that are going up. All 4 of those are getting built to completion. The southern one should close, we think, like the 3rd week of January. And then the other 3, we're waiting for buyers. Both of the buyers are people moving here from outside of Warsaw. One person is from Warsaw, the other one is, I guess, starting a career here in Warsaw. And then we've done the demolition on the mixed-use portion of the project over by Center Lake. On the screen, you see a rendering of what we think the building will look like. So 4 stories, first floor, commercial, room for a restaurant on the east side, left of the page, and then a Parkview Health has signed a lease to open a clinic up on the west side of the building, and then apartments on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. And then if you go to the 3rd slide, so that's a site plan, kind of skewed, I guess, but you can see the building on the west with views looking out towards the lake, and then parking along back. And then the parking will get built. Current plan is in 2 phases because, as you'll find out later in the program, there's a park building on the southeast corner still. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, just for reference, the curve on the top, that's the new plaza, the lakefront plaza, so it gives you a little scope. Buffalo Street's on the left side, and the wraparound to Indiana on the right side of that picture. So, but yeah, the current parks maintenance shed is down on the lower right corner of that rendering. So,
When do you expect to get started, Dave?
It's a great question. Right now, we're having challenges getting engineering drawings done. So the architecture drawings are done, but we're waiting for an engineer to finish the work and sign off on the math. So once that's done, then financing, everything's lined up, and probably takes us, 3 to 5 weeks to get through the state release program and then get a building permit and start.
I think a lot of the challenges that you'll hear about tonight as we talk about the BOT, I'd call them global supply chain challenges, are impacting not only materials, but labor as well. So,
And it's just random things, like we have a project up in South Bend that we're building, and we're probably a year behind schedule plus, and the easy answer is, it's COVID, but it's like in the middle of the project we were not stalled, but just like slowed because of drywall mud. There was a shortage, so we were on allocation. They could have charged us 10 times more for that drywall mud. We would have paid it. It doesn't change the budget of the project at all. But if you can't get it, you just wait. And so they were rationing all the projects they had. So everyone, we got so much bats of insulation, so much mud for, the middle of the project, and we couldn't go any faster. And there's stories of other projects getting stalled because they don't have transformers. We're waiting for underground pipe to do some water main extension over near this project for the townhome construction. And it's just random stuff that we've not experienced having to account for those delays in getting that material. But that's the nature of today.
all right, anybody else?
Cool.
All right, Dave,
you.
thanks for coming down. Sure appreciate it, and certainly keep us apprised as things are popping.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. All right. So, moving into unfinished business, tonight will be the second reading of Ordinance 2021-1202. This is amendment to Chapter 74. We went through first reading, it passed with an amendment to it with one of the one-ways, the Union Street one-way was removed, and I looked through and didn't see it in here, so I assume this has been updated.
So that would have been under section 74-124,
Yeah,
and it was item 8, which was removed.
okay. So with that, the ordinance is back for second reading. And Joel, do you want to, is there anything you want to add, or okay, all right,
Just to clear up one thing about that, item 8. So item 8 in the current ordinance is what makes Union Street a one-way street. There had been a proposal prior to our last meeting to remove it as a one-way street. And this board chose to leave it as a one-way street. So item 8 will still remain as an ordinance as it currently is. It just won't be removed to make it a two-way street. So I just wanted to be clear that we're on the same page about that.
It was removed,
Our
so it
plan-
wouldn't be removed.
There was a potential ordinance that would have removed it as a one-way street, making it a two-way street.
Yeah.
The plan currently is for it to stay a one-way street if this document is approved on second reading.
all right. So I'll turn it over to the council for discussion. Again, I'd like to perhaps get the second reading accomplished tonight. I know there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and we're certainly here to open it up if there's any further discussion.
Well, the only comment I would make, and I think I made it last time, is this was a lot to digest in one ordinance. I would kindly ask that we don't get something like this again. So I haven't had a chance to go through and check these. I don't know if the Traffic Commission has. I assume they have. So it was just a lot to digest, I thought.
I can assure you that Commissioner Grubbs, Joel Beam, Roger Sarver, and myself laid eyes on every line that our city attorney put in there. So it's as perfect as it can be at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, I was made aware there was quite a bit of effort put into this. It was very tedious, and I know there's a lot of checking and double checking to make sure that it was correct. And there still may be a mistake in there.
Oh, yeah.
But I know they've worked hard, and we'll hear about it, and we'll take care of it. These things continue to change, continue to evolve, and we're just trying maybe be a little more diligent about keeping up with this a little bit more
lastly,
frequently.
I might add, thanks for the work that went into it by everybody. I appreciate it.
All right.
And the one thing I would say, I think Lance and Joel would tell you this too. The Traffic Commission meets regularly, and they're constantly updating. And with the annexations and just the changes in town, everything won't be up to date after this is done. There's still more work that needs to be done, and there's more work that's done by the Traffic Commission on a routine basis. But we're going to do our very best to not make it be several years in between times when ordinances are updated. Maybe this will be a more annual thing or semi-annual thing.
Well, with that, I would move that we accept ordinance number 2021-1202.
I would second that.
All right, motion by Jack, seconded by Cindy. Any further discussion or final comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. All right, passed unanimously. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate all your work. All right, with that, let's move into some new business. Tonight, we are presenting Resolution 2021-1204, which at the end of a presentation here, we will ask you to consider. Resolution 2021-1204, which would award our build, operate, transfer transaction to Greg Martz. But, you know, we've talked before, it's actually been just one day shy of a year ago that you all passed the original resolution allowing us to use BOT as a delivery method here in the community. So there's been a lot go on in the last year besides COVID. We've been working hard to try and get this project underway. We've also kind of got caught up in that same wave of supply chain, construction cost inflation, labor problems that Mr. Matthews was talking about. So I'd ask you to take that all into account as we work through this tonight. Before we get started, I want to introduce City of Warsaw has a BOT, a request for qualifications and proposals committee that's required by statute. And it's myself, your council president, Jack Wilhite, Community and Economic Development Director, Jeremy Skinner, city engineer, James Emmons, and our park superintendent, Larry Plummer. So that the statutory group that is actually making the recommendation tonight to accept in resolution 2021-1204 that we award the BOT to Martz, Greg Martz. So that's the crux of what we're trying to get done tonight. But a lot of this work that we will do, if and when you approve this, will then be administrative work to get the ball rolling. And that's also addressed in this, in the information we're going to give you tonight. So what I've asked, developer Greg Martz is here. I've also got our consultants, Cam Starnes, who's on the video. Cam, can you hear us? All right, I think we're going to have that same problem with your microphone that we had last time, so appreciate, we got to improve that, I think. And if you need to call in, we could do that too. While he's doing that, that's better. Yes, sir. So Cam is our legal consultant from Taft. Todd Samuelson's here from Baker Tilly. And of course, our committee is here. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and these folks are all here so that if there are questions, they've all had significant experience with BOTs. I know Greg has done. Greg, how many have you done in Indiana?
A little over 100.
Yeah, that's what we're close, a little over 100. He's actually been the developer for over 100 BOTs, a lot within municipalities similar to ours. Obviously, our respected finance consultant from Baker Tilly has been involved in traditional bond financing as well as some BOTs, and again is helping us as we work through this. So with that said, I know Cam at Taft has worked on many as well. He's got the legal side of this. I engaged him early on with this being our first BOT to make sure that we are protected in these agreements. And he, as you hear tonight, he's very thorough. Cam, I'll be with you in just a minute. I've just got a few things to talk about here. I did want to go into just a little bit of history of the timeline of this project. You know, with the displacement of the park offices and the park maintenance shed from the North Buffalo Street mixed use project back in 2019, the park board authorized Larry to engage with Design Collaborative to combine the needs of both offices. You might remember we were looking at maybe putting the park offices in the pavilion and then a separate shed, and Design Collaborative and Larry really started talking about it and figured we could save a significant amount of money to put everyone in one building. So Design Collaborative started working, and I think in about July of 2020 came up with a design and a kind of a preliminary estimate, again, to combine both those offices into one building. So, Larry, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put the drawings up. I'd like you to come up and talk about that design process that you went through with Design Collaborative, about your space needs of both your park offices and the maintenance. Let's see if I can do this. All right. So again, this is the RFPQ committee per IC 523. These are all the 5 members that have engaged. Here's a drawing of the Parks building. Larry, I've got the floor plan and all the views, so I'll let you.
That's what I'd like to go to, is the floor plan, if you will, yeah.
Does that look good
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
As the mayor said, we've had extensive meetings with the design team and our staff, and the first thing we looked at was the size of the building that we needed, the length of the bays. Currently, our bays right now aren't long enough to get all of our pieces of equipment in there to work on them, to service them and clean them. What are our needs currently, and what are our needs in the future? We're looking, 20 years down the road. We're not just looking tomorrow. So the design allowed us to get a lot of the pieces, inside the building. As you can see, we'll start with the left side here is the wash bay. This will allow us to service or clean all of our equipment. Currently in our facility, our wash bay is in our mechanics bay. So if we're washing something, we can't work on something. So it creates a problem. As you move on from the left, the second and third bay there are mechanics bays. We currently have one mechanics bay with a lift in it. If we have a project going where a truck is on the lift and we have something else break down, we're either outside doing it or somewhere else. We don't have room for that second bay. So this will allow us to, if we have a truck on the lift, we're working on it to get parts, we can pull another vehicle in, service it while we're waiting on parts or something for that. So that was very important for our needs. The work bays, the fourth and fifth bay, those will continue to be utilized for in-house projects. We do a lot of in-house projects to save contractor fees, and we do that with our employees. We'll also use it for storage throughout the year, mowers, things of that sort, all the equipment that we use from there to service central parks and other parks.
Larry, do you want to use the pointer, the laser pointer? Would that help? You just press that button.
Okay. So then those are those 2 bays there. So then we get into the locker room, which is right in here. We currently do not have a locker room. We have a break room, locker, restroom, all in one spot with a couple picnic tables in it. We don't even have enough lockers for the amount of employees that we have now. This would allow us to have lockers for our employees, plus additional lockers for future. So that's that. Office space, right here we would have the activities director, the assistant, the maintenance director, the foyer. As we come in, the public would come into this foyer. We'd have a receptionist here, superintendent office, and then we would have a break room, conference room there. This would allow us to, in this area here, to have not only our breaks away from our garage area that we currently have, but it would also allow us to have a training. As you know, training is so important nowadays, and we just don't have a place to do it. So this gives us access to training of our employees. So that's pretty much the first floor. The second floor, if you take this right here, and it comes all the way down, and then it goes to here, that would be a second floor, this area right there. That would allow us for storage and future expansion of our offices. So if down the road we have more rec or we have more staff, this gives us the ability to create more offices upstairs, and also gives us the storage that we need upstairs. This is a mezzanine up here up top. So it's accessible from down low, so we have supplies that we can put in there. This tool crib, currently we have an old tool crib that's built out of, I think I did it in the late 80s. We built it out of old picnic table boards, and that's what we have in there. But this would allow us to put our tools, all our hand tools, compressors, things of that sort in there, plus also our IT equipment, because it would be controlled, thermally controlled, and we don't have that now. We just have an open thing that dust and everything gets into our stuff in there. So if we can go back to the aesthetics, Joe, of the building. We feel this look right there, being catty corner from the Zimmer headquarters. This is something that we felt we needed to have, something that in that area that represented the city and the Parks Department well. So if I say to this building, this is what we came up with. I mean, it's nothing Taj Mahal-ish. It's just something that looks good, it looks clean, and the public knows where the park office is when they come into Central Park. As you remember, about 2018, we did a Central Park master plan. One of the things that we did was coming off of Fort Wayne Street, we had an arch there, the Welcome to Central Park arch, kind of the gateway into Central Park. And it called for the offices to be to the left-hand side as you entered off of Fort Wayne Street. So this is something we've looked at for a long time. It was down to, we had originally planned it to be where the NIPSCO substation is. But that didn't come to fruition because NIPSCO wanted to retain that, so we moved it a little bit to the south there. So I just think it's a great place. You know, for a long time, a couple of years, as Joe said, we've been displaced from our offices. I just feel, and I've said this to all of you, that it's important to get our office staff and our maintenance staff back together and work together in Central Park, because that's where probably 70% of our work is in the Central Park, Buffalo Street, Municipal, Bixler area. So it's really important for all of us to get back there. It's been a struggle the last couple of years to keep everything together, but we really need to get back to this. So if there's any questions that you have for me, I'll try to answer them.
Larry, just.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so this is gonna front Fort Wayne Street?
Yeah, this part right here is,
Okay.
from here is Fort Wayne Street,
Okay.
and this would be Indiana Street.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Doors would be to the north, the garage doors in the back.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, Larry, any other questions? Again, I want you to understand how the design process is. I mean, this has been 2 years probably in the making. I know
Yes.
They finished the drawing sometime in July of 20 and gave us kind of their first really rough estimates. But this is pretty much the original design that they come up with. And as you'll hear later, as we've struggled with these increase in materials and costs, you know, we looked, the committee looked at trying to pare down the costs. And as Larry said, these are architectural panels. Jeremy, I know you can discuss this probably better than I can, but everything we looked at to save money, we would go back to something maybe less durable and with less longevity, and there really wasn't that much of a savings at the end of the day. There's no brick on this. These are just all designs of these architectural panels. Jeremy, any comments on the design work and at least the exterior side of it, both you and Larry?
I would just say that the group went over the designs, and Larry did a great job working with the designers and putting this together. One of the aspects we wanted in the end was we have a lot of money that we're putting into Buffalo Street, and it's important that our product is comparable to what is being put into Buffalo Street, and keeping that design and that intent of that district that we're trying to create. So at the same time, we're trying to manage that look, making sure that it meets the kind of atmosphere and the characteristics that we want to see, and and on the other side, trying to maintain something that of value. So working with the architects over the last year and a half, this is the product that we put together. Construction costs, even with COVID, obviously have gone up, but they'll continue to go up. It's not going to change. We feel like this product that's before you meets the integrity of that district, meets the intent of what we're trying to accomplish down there, and it is reasonably priced to do that.
I just have a question about ingress and egress. Will Indiana Street remain as a boulevard with the divider down the middle?
Yes.
And then are we planning to put a sidewalk on the side where the building is so that people can get to it from the like if they're coming up from
Yes.
the mixed-use building,
Yes. Yep.
that they would be able to walk through that. And then when your vehicles enter, well, if I remember right, they were going to enter off of Indiana and then exit through the alley over there?
We would have the option of either way, Diane,
Okay.
either to the west or to the east there. And there is two parking spaces in front of the building on Indiana Street.
Okay.
So somebody
I was
that
wondering
could
about
walk
that, like
across
for
the street
somebody
could go there.
handicapped or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
to,
But there is a sidewalk there as well.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, thank you, Diane. Okay, thanks, Larry, appreciate it. So shortly after, we got that design and kind of looked at the original estimates, and these go back to July of 2020, were somewhere between, I think a little over like 2.25, somewhere between 2 and 2.5. But those were just the estimates from the architectural drawings. Certainly, we knew it was going to be more than that, just knowing that once we brought things up to speed with current prices and got materials lists and went for a full bid, that it would be more than that. But it started out somewhere between 2 and 2.5. So just about a year ago, we decided that we wanted to do the BOT, and that's when we engaged Cameron Starnes, again, who's with us tonight, to guide us through the BOT. It's a very popular process in communities because it really takes the construction risk out of our hands from the traditional bid build, and also gives us a guaranteed maximum price, which we'll talk about tonight. And it allows us to choose who we want to do the project. So again, tonight, the process is formalizing our selection of our developer. So then again, as I mentioned, just a year ago, tomorrow, December 21st, you all passed that resolution allowing us to use the BOT delivery method as an option. So in March, the March through May, this committee that we've talked about, this statutory committee that's required in this process, sat down and developed a spec to go out and attract those that were interested in the project. And we went through that process, interviewed the respondents, and felt that Greg Martz's group was who we wanted to use primarily because of who they brought to the table and the quality of their work and the fact that they've done more of these than anybody in the state. And with this being our first BOT, we thought it was important to use someone who's been through this before. So the next step was and this has probably been the most difficult part, is going through this scoping process, because about the time we looked at we got an original, we got our first number, remember it was about somewhere between 2 and 2.5. The number we got in May was 2.9, and thought, boy, we've got to figure this out because this thing's going up. And we didn't realize, I think at the time, that we were just at the beginning of this wave of these projects increasing costs, and again with difficulty with materials and labor and supply chain. It's you all know what's going on. So the scoping period, we spent some time working with Greg. Greg was working with all of his suppliers, and we spent a lot of time trying as a group to figure out a way to get the cost down on this project. And I think what we found out was it wasn't that we were utilizing expensive materials or we had luxuries that we could do without. It was just this, what I've just talked about. It was this surge in pricing that was just really driving the price up. So, we decided, that 2.9, now by July, it was up to 3.6, which is where we stand today. And again, we spent a lot of time trying to pare that down, and the quality that would suffer from saving not commensurate with the reductions led the group to make the recommendation to go with this price that is continuing to rise. And you'll hear from Greg tonight how he's locked in a lot of the prices but they continue to rise. And certainly that's something we're going to have to consider as we decide to do this, that we can get things ordered. Not only are the prices going up, but the delivery time, as you heard from Mr. Matthews, I think we've got a delivery time on our structural steel now of 8 months. So we order something tomorrow, and the steel doesn't get here till August. So those are some ideas of what we're dealing with. And again, the committee are all here. If you've got questions of that process, I know I purposefully included Jack. He's been at all the meetings and certainly can address, what we're talking about or attest to that. Jeremy or James, would you comment for just a moment on what you've seen in wastewater and stormwater projects, more stormwater projects that you've seen in the last year, and the pricing, what your experience has been from what we thought we were going to pay and now what we're being asked to pay?
Yeah, we've had a multitude of projects, 3 or 4, and all of them have come in anywhere from 30% to 60% over the engineer's estimates. And it isn't because the contractors are paying their staff more, it's primarily because of the shortage of materials. And to get those materials to be effective on the project, the contractors are paying a premium. We've had contractors talk about, yeah, we got the pipe, it's coming out of Arizona. Used to be they'd get the pipe and it's coming out of Fort Wayne. And they literally have to pay those shipping costs. So it's a lot of that shortage of materials that's driving the price up. So we're seeing that on almost every other infrastructure project we've put out. None of them, well, short of the lining project. Apparently the material they used for the liners, they had on site. The contractors that bid on that literally had made their own. So they had thought ahead enough and they were able to get that. So that's the only project we've recently bid that was in the ballpark of the engineer's estimate. But all of the other pipe projects, even some of the projects that are like the Kelly Pond project, which has some pipe in it, but a lot of it's earth moving and moving things around. The prices are all higher.
All right. So, in a nutshell tonight, what we're asking you to do again is to approve. We've got a guaranteed maximum price that you'll see as we go through here, the 3.6. As far as financing this, we've set aside some capital funds to try and buy this down. We're looking at about $1.6 million in capital funds from edit, redevelopment, parks budgets that we will be expected to probably sometime next year. We will choose to make some construction payments, some BOT payments early, because that will save us in the end on that interest, that carrying cost, to when we finally take control of the project, which we're looking at, I believe, is July of 23. If the steel gets here in August, then we're going to have a lot of construction, and I think that's the final date. The completion date would be July of 23. So, but we don't have any role in the, and I'm getting a little ahead, but the developer is handling all the contracts, but we do have an opportunity to save some costs by putting the down payment on the steel and that type of thing, so that we don't have to worry about that, the interest through that period. So, Todd Samuelson, if you'd come up to just talk just a little bit about what we're planning on doing is, again, buying down with capital funds, and then the remaining $2 million we would put into a bond probably in 23. We've talked about another necessary project down at the street department. Their building is in bad shape. We are right now doing some engineering or some pre-engineering, some architectural work to come up with a feasibility study for that project. That project is probably a year and a half away, but the idea would be is that we would roll the whatever we don't buy down with capital dollars, we would put into a bond. So Todd, just comments on this kind of versus the traditional bond financing.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Todd Samuelson, a partner with Baker Tilly. happy holidays to everybody. So as the mayor outlined, as we looked at options for funding here, and some of this you may have heard as my partner Jeff Rao was here to talk about the comprehensive financial plan for the city that we've recently updated, and this project, among other projects, were taken into account in that plan. And as we looked at and thought about the funding for this park project, knowing that the city also had plans for perhaps a more substantial project for the street department coming in, probably the earliest would be mid of '23 for that project. And again, working with Greg and Cameron on options around, well, let's not potentially have the city do two financings if we can bridge, if you will, the funding for the park project with, as the mayor described, and there is that amount of money through funds on hand plus cash flow of roughly 1.6 that can be utilized to bring the funding or the longer term financing down to around 2. And I know that there's still scope and work to be done on the street department project, but just working with estimates of what that project may be and the funding or the reimbursement for the parks project, and really rolling that into one bond issue roughly 18 months, 20 months from now, seem to be the most effective and efficient use of city resources. Now, granted, there is the potential for interest rate risk for that type of project. I learned a long time ago not to predict the interest rate market, but it's strong right now in terms of rates being low. So there is, I mean, just looking at all the potential benefits of one financing and not going through two sets of financing costs, et cetera, there may be an offset, and we can't guarantee, no one can, what interest rates will be in 2023. But even with that being said, as we ran some sensitivity on all of that, this just seemed to be the most efficient path forward. And working with Greg and Cameron, and we also consulted with bond counsel to make sure that the what I call the MOU or the resolution that you're considering tonight would not put any roadblocks to be able for the city to be able to, in essence, reimburse from the bond issue to fund this project, and then roll that into one financing for both the park project and the street project roughly 18 months from now. And as we looked at overall resource management and tax rate management, that all seems to fit within the overall financial plan for the city as well.
Questions?
One additional thing that, in order to affect that, and it's a pretty simple process, one thing that we would recommend and confirmed by bond counsel is to have the city do what's referred to as a reimbursement resolution, which would come to you early next year. Short resolution, in essence, what it says is the city reserves its right to reimburse itself for this project, now the down payment portion, I think, is what you're contemplating investing in this with cash, but we're talking about the difference between that and the 3.6 GMP. That from a tax code perspective, we would like to look at it as opposed to a debt refunding, rather look at it as a reimbursement to the city of that $2 million, if you will, or that difference between what you put down in cash or cash flow versus what gets rolled into the bond issue in '23. So that reimbursement resolution would come in January or February of next year. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you. So again, before we look at the resolution, those three items in number one, the BOT transfer MOU, the build, operate, transfer easement agreement, and the build, operate, transfer disbursement agreement, I'm going to have Cam Starnes walk you through those things from Taft. He's on now. And just give you kind of a high-level view of these documents. These are documents that will be administered in January at the closing, but certainly are a part of the details in these you need to understand as we make this decision. So with that, Cam, I'll let you jump on and start with the BOT MOU. I think you all can open that up if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. Good to be with you this evening. Thank you for allowing me to join you virtually. I would have been glad to be in Warsaw this evening, but I had two prior public meetings earlier this evening in other parts of the state. So the wonders of technology have allowed me to join all three of them in succession, and was glad to save the best for last and be here to talk to you about the library transfer this evening. First, contextually, as you may all recall from our discussion a year ago, as the mayor mentioned, when you adopted the BOT as a delivery method via resolution, this is a delivery method for public projects, and similar to the way that you may have done other projects in the past through finalizing a design, bidding that design, and then holding construction contracts with various contractors and subcontractors to then effectuate the construction to that design. This is an alternative to that method, which involves the selection of a developer and the privatization of the design and/or construction, in this case, construction of a public project for an agreed-upon price. So, with that as context, and as the mayor also mentioned, this has become a very popular way to deliver projects, especially in an era with considerable price volatility, to be able to get through the scoping period as the committee has done here and arrive at a guaranteed maximum price before getting under contract is advantageous, and essentially then pushes the risk of all the various supply chain and cost overrun issues to the private developer role. And so the contract you have in front of you, in concert with the recommendation from the committee to select GM Development, speaks to that transaction. You'll note it is not a construction contract. It is an agreement to acquire improvements that will be delivered and developed by that selected developer at an agreed upon price and paid for through what are known as BOT payments, which are similar to progress payments as the project comes together and identifies the various rights and responsibilities of the parties related thereto, as it pertains to items like inspections and change orders and things of that nature. This is the operative contract between the city and the selected developer to develop and complete those improvements at that price. The developer then, in turn, on the other side of this contract, is the party that holds the downstream construction contracts with the general contractor and then that general contractor with the various subcontractors and suppliers. So that's why it looks different than contracts you may have seen in the past under design bid build delivery method that are specifically about construction. This is a simpler document and speaks really to the development of those specified improvements and the price for those improvements that has been arrived at through the scoping period. So any contextual questions about what this agreement functionally does or speaks to relative to the build, operate, transfer, delivery method?
Questions?
So Cam, in the, this is Diane Quantz, in the middle where it talks about change orders, and it talks about change orders from the contractor and change orders from the city, those could potentially affect the overall price that's agreed upon, correct?
Yes, thanks for the question, Counselor. They could. And the way that section works is if there is something specified by the city, it essentially is a right to change the parameters of the design as you see fit, knowing that that may change the price. The flip side is a little different. If there is a change order that the developer wishes to effectuate, the developer then has to ask for a change order, and then the city retains the right to reject that change order if the change order would change the price or the timeline for completion. And that's in there just to allow for, if agreeable, the city can agree to a change and not have to renegotiate the contract. I think that's a term that factors into the selection of the operator in the first place, and I think what the committee has seen through references that he can speak to, and I believe our mission in its memorandum is the development has a good track record across the state of not having pursued change orders on other projects, which is again a layer of how that is potentially advantageous relationship. So that said, there is a mechanism in the contract, you are correct, that there for how a change order is approached and addressed, realizing that the city has the ultimate power to decline a change order if it would increase A, the cost, or B, the timeline for completion.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, I had the same question when I saw that in there.
Okay.
I appreciate that. And I know Greg maybe at some point will let you speak to the change order side of this, but thank you for the question. Okay, Cam?
Yeah, good question. So and you'll see because the scoping period has worked on, I will say, in my experience, different communities enter into these agreements at different phases of the project. So here we've got a BOT agreement that comes after a design has been completed, which was acceptable to the city, and you heard the Parks Director speak to that design process and the inputs to that, and the scoping period after the publication of the RFPQ for BOT development services allowed for the vetting of that design with the construction community and suppliers, et cetera, to arrive at that guaranteed maximum price that is documented in the BOT agreement beforehand. So that all of those inputs have added up to that price, which again is a contrast with the design to build method for delivery projects where you have a design and then you're bidding it out and then you're statutorily obligated to accept the lowest competent qualified bidder, and then in that scenario the city holds those contracts and is potentially the subject of change orders from a multitude of sources, any supplier, any contractor, any subcontractor, all buck all stops at the city. And this has that sort of privatized layer that pushes the risk to a developer as an operator under the P3 statute. So that, again, that's the function of the BOT agreement. There are two ancillary agreements, as the mayor mentioned. One is an easement agreement, which simply allows the developer a construction easement on the underlying real property, which the city owns and will continue to own. Effectively, that means the developer can build improvements on that real property that it will own until they are complete and acceptable and then transferred to the city upon completion. So that's the operative document that allows for construction and improvements on property that the city owns. The disbursement agreement then governs the process by which BOT payments are applied for and made, that progress payment element. So it effectively allows the city to review and vet the same or a similar suite of documents that it would be accustomed to reviewing in a construction draw context including lien waivers and invoices for payment and inspection rights as to work completed prior to the authorization of any DOT payments. So that's sort of the suite of documents, the DOT agreement being the umbrella that speaks to that developer relationship and the construction of those improvements at the agreed upon price. The easement agreement that allows for improvements to be built on real property the city owns, and the disbursement agreement that speaks to the mechanism for application and approval of DOT payments. So that's the overview. I'm certainly glad to be answering particular or more specific questions.
I think the thing that I was most concerned about when I considered this method, and my mind's been put to rest, but was that the city doesn't create any risk to this property or this project by not holding the contracts. And the no lien clause, I think, was one way that Cam has addressed that. But again, relying on his expertise, that we are protected through this construction process in the event of a default by the builder. These are the legal side of this document that if you have questions, I think it's important to ask those now. If not, obviously we can move on, but that's really the crux here.
And I would go ahead and say too that the resolution that is on the agenda does also document the selection. I think the mayor's mentioned that earlier. Under statute, to date, the council, as you will all recall, has adopted the Code 523, the public-private partnership statute of the DOT delivery method for use, which is required in the statute. The city has released an RFPQ. It has received responses. The DOT committee has performed and reviewed those, gone through the scoping period, and is making a recommendation to the council as the board, as it is defined in the statute, which is the fiscal body, you all. And statute also requires that recommendation be given a public hearing, which we have duly noticed. So there is a public hearing component to this on the selection itself of GN development. And then the resolution documents the acceptance of that recommendation from the DOT committee as to selection and the authorization to enter into the DOT agreement with that selected developer. So we talked about the sort of suite of contractual documents. There's also the resolution as the operative approval document that is before you on your agenda this evening.
All right, thank you. Greg, if you'd like to come up and maybe just make a few comments about the process and maybe address the issue of change orders and anything else you want to talk before we consider the resolution.
Yep, that sounds great, Mayor. And good evening. Most everything I have to say tonight will just be reinforcing everything you've already heard. But at the same time, these are good questions, and I thought maybe if I say them in a microphone, it will kind of give you a verbal contract of some of these promises that I've made here over the past year. We responded to the request for proposals. It was issued in April, and we were selected in May by the committee. And I always call that a conditional selection because we still have to prove ourselves, through the scoping period in order to make it in front of you here tonight. And so that scoping period, as we've talked about many times tonight already, occurred throughout this summer. And we delivered the budget in July, but then we continued to work through August, September, October on various ideas just to try and essentially save money. And exactly what Jeremy's already said, what Mayor has said, what would happen is we'd look at ideas, let's say take 3 weeks, and by the time we'd have those ideas, the suppliers would hold. We were getting quotes on steel of 24 hours at one point this fall, where they'd tell us a quote and it was good for one day. And so we kept getting into what I thought were great ideas, but by then construction prices would go up and we'd be right back where we started. But I think even more than that is, in order to make any significant differences, it really, and I would agree with the committee on this, it was a common comment that we received throughout the summer, was that the ideas that saved anything substantial hurt the longevity of the building. And I think we didn't want that. It became clear the committee didn't want that. And so my team, my construction team, all the subcontractors, we came to the conclusion about a month ago, just internally, we had these meetings, and basically got the feeling that it was either now or never. We were just going to have to either commit or not. And so what we told the committee about a month ago is that we were willing to commit to our July budget as the building was originally designed. I can tell you that this building costs more than what that July budget is. It costs more now than it did 7 days ago. We actually received a call about a week ago and from our steel supplier saying that if we didn't sign a contract that day, that trade was going up 13% in one night. And so, but we take what we do really seriously. From this statute is my entire life. I've always felt that the reason the state made this statute was because it was a way that we could present a guaranteed price to you before you make a decision, and that price really was guaranteed. And so we came to the conclusion that we had given that budget in July, that we were not going to go over it. And I'm still making that promise to you all tonight that we will not go over that budget. We will not come back and ask you for more money, no matter what happens from here on out. The only issues I see, again, everything that everyone's touched on tonight is true, which is from a scheduling standpoint and a budget standpoint, the steel is the problem. I was doing the math there when you were saying 8 months. What we're hearing is about 40 weeks. There's actually some suppliers are even up to 52, but the supplier we're planning on going with is 40 weeks. So it's probably a little bit more than 8 months as I was doing the calculation there, Mayor. But and so what ends up happening then is all the other subs won't commit out that far. Because if you think we'll have the steel package coming, let's say in August or September, well, a site work contractor can't really commit because they're putting their year together, so they can't commit to be starting site work in, let's say, July right now. So we have a lot of subcontracts that are not committed, but again, what I'm telling you tonight is that we are making a commitment to you that no matter what those subcontracts become, the price that we're presenting tonight will remain that price, no matter how bad it gets. I feel confident that the market's going to work its way out here over the winter. But again, even if it doesn't, I'm making that promise that you all are protected from anything that may happen. I want to address the change order section immediately, because actually there was a time when we completely removed the change order section from our contracts. But what would happen is that then there's no mechanism to make changes at all. And I feel like it is important to have that. So, for instance, when it says change order, if it says that there's a change order that we would present, you would approve, and then it would adjust the price accordingly, however we would present it. Well, that goes both ways. It's not only a change order that we would want to change something in the building and ask for more money. It actually goes the other way too, which is if there was a change made that would reduce costs, then that's the mechanism that you would use to do that as well. So to me, it's nothing more than a mechanism to allow for that to happen. But again, I'm not going to be presenting with a change order for increased costs, and we can use this meeting as a way to document that. Going forward, what we'll do immediately, I've actually already locked in. When I got that call a week ago, I actually did go ahead and lock in the steel package because we just couldn't afford for that to happen. This steel company would probably be really happy if I backed out of that contract because it'd be just one less thing they'd have to fulfill. So I feel like, again, I'm not saying that to add pressure onto you, but what I'm telling you is that we're ready to move forward immediately. I feel like we have our biggest risk already taken care of. If you were to vote yes tonight, we would start locking in as much as we can, as many subcontracts as we can right now. And again, the schedule, the one thing I do want to get across, so we spent the whole night talking about budget. One thing I am worried about that I just hope that you'll remember tonight is that when you don't see things happening on site for several months, it's not that we're not ready and we're not wanting to get going. It's just that if the steel package isn't coming till September, there's just things we've got to do to be smart. Like, for instance, we don't want to put in your foundations in January and then it's sitting there just open and exposed while we're waiting on steel to come 9 months later. So just know, even though you don't see activity, there will be a lot going on. In fact, starting tomorrow, there will be a lot going on to secure the schedule and to secure the budget.
Question?
So we're looking at a July 2023 deadline, basically, to be up and running, have the door open.
Yes, sir.
And half that time, you're going to be waiting on steel.
I know, yes. It's terrible.
So once the steel comes, you're going to have to hustle to meet that deadline.
You'll be amazed how fast, once it comes, how fast the building will go up.
Yeah.
But yes, you're exactly right.
And what happens if the deadline isn't met?
Well, Cam, you may have a different answer for that, but I would just say that the final payment, retainage, however you want to say that, isn't paid until it's complete.
Fair enough. Great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Others? All right, thank you, Greg. And there may be some questions once we get into the resolution, but thank you. Todd, thank you. Appreciate it. Larry, appreciate it. Cam, any final comments before we consider Resolution 2021-1204?
None from me there. Thank you.
All right. So let's move on. If you guys would pull up 21-1204. Again, this basically, basically awards this contract to GM Development Company. It's essentially what we're doing on the recommendation of our local committee. Anybody from the committee have any final thoughts? Or there may be questions? Okay. You know, this process brings this all to the council, guaranteed maximum price, and this is very new. We've never done anything like this. Executing this will be up to the authorized individual, and the mayor of the city of Warsaw is that individual, but it will all, in my mind, be done through the Board of Works, through the public forum. But obviously the approval is your call with the price and what you've heard tonight.
One thought I'm just going through my head, if I may. We have a guaranteed not to exceed price. I think we've all been somewhat conditioned at this point after nearly 2 years of COVID and seeing supply chain issues and can't get product. Even in my small business, I can't get product. I know Cindy in her business can't get product. I can't imagine what it's like for you guys not being able to get product. Over the weekend, the death knell, I think, was put into the Build Back Better program in Washington, and I'm just wondering in my mind if there was a lot of forethought from lumber producers, steel producers, cement, ag people to get geared up and get ready for that. And now that it's not going to happen, is it possible that some of those supplies are going to get freed up and maybe prices drop? I mean, I've lived long enough to realize anything can happen. If that does happen, is there a possibility this won't come in at that price level and the city could maybe save some money?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Yes, that is right. So if the subcontracts end up adding up to less than the contract value, then yes, that's exactly.
And I realize you need to make a profit. You're the one that's going out on the limb, so to speak, to guarantee a price. But I was just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly hadn't thought about much because it hasn't happened a lot.
Right.
If that doesn't happen, you are exactly right.
Greg, if you remember, I asked you that question very early on, really before this whole tsunami of price increases was going on, and your answer was very definitive. Everything that's done in this process is transparent and open, and all of the costs are there. And the answer Greg gave me when we very first started out, if we happen to come in under that, we pay. It's a guaranteed maximum price.
Okay.
I think you answered that also when you answered my question about the change order. The change order can go to either increase or decrease the cost.
James.
This whole process, our background as a city has been design, bid, build. This process by statute is a completely different process. So this price, I mean, I hear your hesitancy is, how do we know the price isn't going to go up? How do we know change orders aren't going to happen? It's part of the way this statute was written to ensure that it is fixed. So I just want to reinforce that you understand our perspective of how we're looking at some of this, I think, is slanted towards the design, bid, build process, which leaves wide open change orders, leaves wide open the final cost. To use this process, we had to follow strict rules, and the developer has to follow that other side of those rules. So I just want to reinforce that I like the process. It took risk out of both sides. I've been involved in some design build projects in my career. This is very similar to that, where you're speaking openly with that builder and with that contractor before you get to the dotted line of what the price is. So it takes risks out of the project. When you eliminate risk, the pricing is more fair on both sides. So I just wanted to reinforce that I like the process and remind you that if you looked at statutorily how we got to where we're at and why we're allowed to do it this way, it is different rules than under the conventional design bid bill.
Thank you.
You know, I got a comment also about this process. Now, I've not had really any experience with the design bid build. And looking at the two, you'd say, council has approved a certain amount for this building under a bot. We also approved a price under design bid build for the fire department for Station 3. But if I remember correctly, there was a certain amount of fluff added in there because there's always, in a design bid build, there's always change orders that make it go over the initial contracted price. Am I tracking right?
It's more often over than under.
Yeah. And so we always added in that little bit of fluff to make sure that we didn't, that we were voting on something at a certain price. The problem with that, I think, is that you almost always went up to the maximum price that we voted on. So in essence, we were voting on something that we thought would be this, but we knew it could be this, and it would always be the maximum at the end of the day, maybe. Whereas in this, the maximum is the maximum. And those change orders aren't going to affect it not unless they come back here for us to appropriate more money for it. I don't know if I cleared anything up or muddied it, but
James, I think your comments are well taken. We're so used to doing it the other way. We're always worried about change orders, schedules, I mean, and then us being at risk. And that's the beauty of this. We're having kind of the hard discussion, the upfront discussion right now in front of the public and to get your recommendations. But that process was designed so that it's it meets all the requirements of this statute. And once this is approved, the only anxiety we have is how long is it going to take to get done. I firmly believe that. And we would have that no matter what delivery method we used. So if, I do want to point out, there's also a document in here that we did advertise the public hearing, which I will progress with right now. So I will open the meeting up to comments from anyone who has who is in support of this process first from the public. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on behalf of this process? All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposal, against the resolution? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting. And Jack, again, I think I'll throw it back to you. I know you've been involved from day one, and if you want to consider Resolution 2021-1204.
well, Mr. Mayor, I'm very thankful that you brought me in on this process early enough for me to grapple with a lot of what has been going on. I can speak to the angst that this committee has had over the design of it, over the looks of it, trying to get the cost down as far as as low as we possibly could, and yet still maintain a decent looking building in a part of our city that deserves to look nice. I almost wonder sometimes if we didn't work so hard on trying to save some money that we lost some money this past summer. So with that, I would move that we accept Resolution 2021-1204.
And as your representative to the Park Board, I would second that.
All right, motion made by Jack, seconded by Diane. Any final comments or questions? We've got a great team sitting here. Everybody in this room has worked hard to get us to this point, and I think understands the process well enough that if you've got any hesitancy, I'd certainly appreciate having the resources here to answer those questions.
I have no hesitancy. I really like the BOT way of doing this. I hope it's the first of several going forward in the future.
Just hope the environment's a little bit better. But anyway, thank you, Mike. I appreciate those comments.
Yeah,
all right. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, living close to this, where this is all going to happen, I've been kind of anxious to see how it's all going to work out, and I'm waiting. So let's get it going.
Wait no more.
Yeah.
I'm anxious to see the park department get back under one roof. Well, I guess they haven't been under one roof ever, but I think this will be a great move for them.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Passes unanimously. Cameron, thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you all for having me. Yes, good evening.
And our work begins now. Thank you. Greg, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Todd, thank you. Committee, thank you all. This has been a little bit of a difficult process, took a little longer than I thought, but at the end of the day, I think we've done the right thing. So thank you all, very much appreciate it. All right, we've still got a little work to do. Let's move on to Resolution 2021-1203. This is a transfer request from the edit budget by the Community and Economic Development Director. Jeremy?
Yeah, so as we move forward with the Anchorage Road project, I would like to transfer some money that is in professional services for edit into 441, I think, which is land, which allows us to purchase the new right-of-way that we'll need to make the road improvements on Anchorage Road. Originally, when we did the budget, I had it all in professional services, not thinking that obviously we're going to be buying right-of-way, so I needed to move some of that into land. So the money was put into the budget in 2021, but it was all put in professional services, and I need to move some into land for those pieces of right-of-way that we'll be purchasing. Not all of this will be, and this won't be all of the right-of-way, but we're PO and as much of the right-of-way as I can that I know about right now. The right-of-way acquisition will go on throughout 2022. We're hoping to start construction on Anchorage Road in 2023. So roughly asking to move $211,100 from professional services into 441, which is land.
And I think you mentioned it, but this is reimbursable 80%, 80/20.
Yeah, it's in the memo. I guess I didn't state it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions?
I move to approve 21-12-3.
I'll second that.
Second. Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Cindy. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Next item is Ordinance 2021-1203. This would be the Dale Custer annexation. Again, I'll remind you all, this is a public hearing, so we'll move into that, but I'll first let Jeremy present.
Yeah, so about a month ago, we started it with a petition. We approved the fiscal plan at the last council meeting. This is the public hearing and the first reading of the actual annexation ordinance. And then the second reading will be at the first city council meeting in January, after which we'll record the annexation and do another public advertisement, advertising the actual annexation, and it will take effect, I think, 30 days after that publication. So tonight you have basically the first reading and the public hearing for the annexation for the Dale Custer property off of Old 30.
All right, so before I open up the public hearing, are there any questions of Jeremy? This is one landowner. It's a pretty straightforward annexation. Questions, comments? All right, with that, I will open up the public hearing portion of the meeting. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on behalf of the petition? Anyone wishing to speak on behalf of the petition? All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the petition? Anyone wishing to speak against the petition? All right, hearing none, I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting and refer the final decision, the first reading back to the council.
I'd make a motion to approve the annexation.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Jeremy, we'll come back then the first meeting in January for the final.
That'll be the final reading. After that, we'll do an advertisement and record the annexation, and then we'll move on to the second phase, which will be expanding the residential TIF to bring this property into it, and Dale Custer will start his development. We have a sanitary sewer main extension we'll work on with him to extend sewer to the property, and hopefully next year there'll be a new subdivision of over 90-some homes under construction.
Great. All right, thank you. All right, the next item is Resolution 2021-1205. This is the designation of an economic revitalization area. Jeremy, anything to say before Steve presents?
If you have any questions after Steve
Okay.
presents, I can go through.
Steve, thanks for your patience.
Happy to be here. I am SRS. I'm a partner with SMFK, and I'm here on behalf of AJM LLC requesting designation of an ERA. And I've listened attentively to discussions about BOTs and MOUs, so I thought I'd just keep the discussion going. Actually, I am here on behalf of AJM LLC Warsaw IN, which is in the process of purchasing the old Kmart building and upgrading it, rehabbing it, whatever you want to call it, for the purpose of establishing a rural king. As you're aware, there are a couple things we're requesting. One is the designation of that particular area as an economic revitalization area, which would provide some eligibility to the owner of the building to request tax abatement. We're doing that simultaneously and have submitted the SB1 form that is specifically applicable to vacant buildings. The SB1 can only be filed in this case where there is a building that's been vacant for at least 1 year. This one meets that without any questions. And tonight's hearing or meeting, it's actually not a hearing, is simply to preliminarily designate the economic revitalization area and initially approve the SB1 statement that AJM has filed. I didn't bring any nice pictures tonight because you all know where the old Kmart building is. And the fact that it's been vacant for more than a year. There have been extensive efforts to find tenants to sell the building. Those have failed. And as a result, the building qualifies for abatement as a vacant building. What's being proposed by Rural King is put $1.5 million in improvements into the building, first of all. Generate 55 new jobs, full-time equivalent jobs, at an average pay of $14.80 an hour, times 40, times 55, times 52 comes out to creation of salaries of about $1.7 million per year. The assessed value of the building right now is $754,000. It's all assessed as a part of the shopping center. And as a result, it's difficult to pull those figures out and put an exact number on what the improvement is. But looking at $1.5 million worth of improvements to the Kmart structure, and when that happens, at some point, you're going to increase the value of that building significantly, whether it's $1.5 million or whatever the assessor comes up with as a number. There's some other benefits that come with Rural King. For those of you who aren't familiar with Rural King, it is, I'm going to call it a big box. It draws from not just Warsaw and Kosciuszko County, it'll draw from adjacent areas. I haven't heard anything bad about it. It's, well, maybe 40 miles from where I grew up in central Illinois, in Mattoon. The appearance of the building certainly will be enhanced. I don't think you could do anything otherwise. And I think one of the other benefits is it pretty much assures that center of continued life. Right now, with that part of the center vacant, the rest of the center is at risk. So here's some logic, and I use that term loosely because I'm going to apply it to the state legislature when they approve vacant building abatement. But here's the way I see their logic. A vacant building is considered by the statute to be essentially the same as a brand new building because it's sitting there, nothing's happening, and all of a sudden you have somebody come in who say, okay, I'm going to rehab it, I'm going to make it work, I'm going to generate jobs, generate income. So the assessed value of the building is eligible for abatement just as a brand-new building would be. So if you approve 5-year tax abatement, it has a schedule of 100%, 80%, 60, 40, 20, and it applies to that assessed value of the improvement. So when Rural King comes in, rehabs it, occupies it, there's not going to be any tax revenue generated by the improvements in that first year. That doesn't include the land, it's only the improvements. And then that decreases, the exemption decreases each year if you approve it for 5 years. The result is ultimately a much higher assessed value than what is there now, along with the job creation and the generation of income. So that's what we're requesting tonight, is the adoption of the confirmatory resolution, or the declaratory resolution, so we can move forward on January 17th with a public hearing formally approving the economic revitalization area and approving the statement of benefits. 18th, pardon me.
It's a designating resolution, correct?
Tonight is the declaratory resolution. The 18th of January would be the confirmatory resolution.
All right. Jeremy, any comments? I think, Steve, you explained it well.
Yeah, you pretty much covered all the bases. I mean, it's just the process we go through to issue tax abatements. The building is vacant. It would be eligible if you designated an ERA. The two processes you described, the designating or declaring the designation of, and then the confirming. If you choose to confirm after the public hearing, then you could approve the SB1 application. So you're not voting on the SB1 application tonight, you're just voting on the confirming resolution. The SB1 application is there to let you know what they're doing in the investment that they're making.
Jeremy, does that ERA, is it just for the old Kmart part that Rural King is going to occupy, or does it take into effect that whole complex, that whole building? So if somebody else wants to come in, they can take advantage of that?
That's a good question. I don't know. Steve, maybe you'll answer. I don't know my legal description name.
Yeah, the legal description that is included with the declaratory resolution includes the entire center because it hasn't been separated out yet. The final confirmatory resolution will have the legal description of the parcel on which the Kmart building is located only. So the ERA the economic revitalization area will only apply to the real estate that the Kmart building is sitting on that's ultimately conveyed to the purchaser. So it won't include the rest of it. Now, the rest of it probably wouldn't qualify anyway. One, there are very few instances where retail qualifies for tax abatement. Vacant building is one of the few, and I'm not aware that the rest of that center has a vacancy problem which would qualify it, even if it had met the other requirements, which it would.
Is the parking lot included in any of that? I had to drive through there tonight.
Pardon me?
Is the parking lot included?
Yes, a good portion of it anyway, yes.
Good. It needs fixed.
I can't imagine why you were asking that question.
Well, I'm kind of glad to see Rural King come. My daughter lives in a town where Rural King has been for quite a number of years, and I've been in the store, and I like the store, so I think it'll be an asset to Warsaw.
All right, anybody else? Is there action to be taken?
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 2021-1205.
All right, thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
Jerry.
Jerry, second? All right, any further discussion or final questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, thanks, Steve, appreciate it. Again, as Jeremy mentioned, that statement of benefits is listed. I think Steve went through the majority of those details there, but it's there for your use for our next meeting when we will approve that after we've done this the second time. So, all right, Jeremy, anything else? All right, well, thank you. Thanks, Steve. Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
All right. Thank you all tonight. Got a lot of work done. It's been a good meeting. Scott, any comments, questions? You've been very quiet here.
Well, I was just thinking a little bit, this board's been through 2 years of chaos. You've done a really good job, and I think the city of Warsaw appreciates all that you do, and you don't hear it near enough, but you've done an exceptionally good job, I think, with all the stuff that's been thrown at you the last couple of years. I just wanted to make my public comment of that tonight.
That's a really nice thing to hear. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
I've had some people asking me about railroad tracks, railroad crossings. I don't know if you've been in touch with them, but.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're scheduled to be fixed in 2023. How do you like that answer?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
2023.
Bronson's
Yeah.
almost impassable now.
Actually, the east-west is a little bit different. I'm talking north-south. I do believe
Center
the
Street's kind
I
of.
believe the
Yes,
east-west
that's
is,
terrible.
they did some this year, and they're gonna do some next year. I went out, and I can make that call. That track master, I think that's what they're called, is local. He lives in this community, and he's very approachable, so I will make a note to call him about the east-west. We've talked, and I know there's a schedule. I mean, obviously, State Road 15 was the first one they
That
did.
Lake Street crossing.
They did a marvelous job on 15, so I would assume they'll continue through.
Well, I was kind of referring to the Center Street where it's.
And it was confusing because they repaved all along Hickory there, but left the tracks on Center.
Oh, it's confusing is right, Cindy. That's that's exactly what I asked the gentleman, my contact from Norfolk and Southern, and he didn't quite see it that way. So I will continue to talk to him. Thank you for bringing that up.
Two different contracts. NDOT did their paving outside of the railroad right away. NDOT is not allowed to pave inside of the railroad right away. That's a railroad contractor that has to go in and pave that. That's why that section was paved.
And that was just done when they put the new rails in. Was it 3 years ago, 2 years ago? And it's, yeah. So the battle goes on with the railroad.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. All right. Well, you all have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all the above. Next
Well,
time
I'm going to just piggyback off of Scott here for a second, our city attorney, and extend those same kudos to the mayor, because I think you've shepherded us through a lot of business this year, a lot of really important business, and you've, I think, exhibited some real leadership from US 30 to what we did tonight, and you know, we're a team. It takes all of us. So credit where credit's due.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, for giving out kudos, the clerk treasurer's office passed that
Absolutely.
review, both federal and state, with stellar recommendations. And they had to adapt to all kinds of changes on the fly, and figure out how we could utilize the money coming into the community. And they did an excellent job of doing that and keeping us informed so that we could move ahead with our business. And the state and the federal government thought so too. So I think we need to give a big shout out to the clerk treasurer's office.
Hey, hey.
Thank you. And we'll tell everybody tomorrow that you said that.
Yeah, tell them that, because
You
they,
can underline that in the minutes.
Joe's going to bring them donuts, I heard.
You already did.
I already did,
Oh, okay, you did it. Okay, good.
but I ate one.
How many were there, 12 or 11?
No, there was 12 because if you buy a dozen down at Wabash Donuts,
that's
they
it,
give
you
you
want
an
them free.
extra one, so I ate the 13th. It just wouldn't fit in the box.
And the other two before you got it.
All right. All right. Thank you all. Merry Christmas to everybody. Dan and Mr. Sloan,
Yeah.
you guys,
I
we
know.
never thank you, and we appreciate trying to make sense of everything that happens up here, because sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but very much do appreciate what you all do to inform our community. Informing our community is a big part of what we do, and if it's not reported properly or improperly, or you all somehow don't do it, no one finds out. So what you all do is very important to us, and
That's a great point.
we really, you don't know how much we appreciate it, getting the word out. So thank you. All right, Jeremy, did anybody say anything nice about you tonight? Jeremy came in on his vacation day, so everybody give Jeremy a hand. All right, is there a motion to adjourn before this gets too crazy? All right, thank you.
You need any signatures, Lynn?
Nope, not for you, Mr. Gross.
Good.